So this morning we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the banjo. And what I have with me is a modern reproduction of a gourd banjo. This was made very recently by a man and his wife in Alabama. The banjo is made with a gourd that is sliced off flat, and then calf skin is stretched over the gourd and tied in with a series of cowhide thongs. This allows you to adjust the skin if it were to become loose. The neck is made of wood, probably poplar, covered with a fingerboard of walnut. And this is a fretless banjo. You notice when I was playing, you can do a lot of slides and slurs with the gourd banjo because it's fretless. But this is it's a deeper sounding instrument. It's very quiet. This would be a good instrument for a cabin setting or a small dance between a group of people in the quarter. So it's really not a performance instrument as we think of the banjo today. But the banjo came from Africa, brought by African slaves. Perhaps some of them actually made it here as complete banjos. Some slave ship captains would want to have a musician on board to get the slaves up on deck and exercise them and keep them a little bit more fit on the trip over. But that didn't happen all the time. Certainly there were musicians who were captured and brought to the New World who had the ability to make their own instrument. And when they came to the New World, they of course found gourds that the Native Americans were using. The skin head would not be difficult to locate, and then they could whittle out their own neck and reproduce the instrument that they had played in Africa. The gourd banjo was used throughout the colonial period up into the early 19th century when the minstrel musicians adopted the banjo for some of their musical performances. And the minstrels needed a little more volume in their performances. So they created a banjo that used a wooden hoop instead of a gourd. And this is a modern open back banjo, sort of an old time banjo, a little bit advanced beyond the minstrel years. The minstrels were still fairly primitive in their tuning pegs, and their strings would have probably been gut strings like the slaves were using on their gourds. But the modern old-time banjo is certainly an antecedent from that time period. The modern banjo is of course louder and is designed for more of a performance venue. Today's bluegrass banjos have a resonator on the back, which throws the sound forward out into the audience. So they're ideal for festivals or concert halls where you really need a lot of volume and you're playing with lots of other instruments. The old-time banjo was adopted, or this style of banjo was adopted by the minstrels, and they traveled across the South learning songs from slaves on plantations. And we were just discussing a tune called Cumberland Gap that is actually known by a West African griot who's recently moved to the United States. He learned that tune in Mali in West Africa, but that tune has been in the old-time repertoire in the mountains from the time of the Civil War. So it's interesting that not only was the instrument brought by slaves either in their heads or as an actual instrument, but they also brought tunes with them from Africa that have remained in our musical library into the 21st century.